What if the soul of a tyrant like Benito Mussolini doesn't just fade away after death? What if, instead of fire and brimstone, there's a reckoning far more profound one that forces a soul to face every tear, every scream, every life it shattered? In this video, we dive deep into the mystical teachings of Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, to uncover what happens to souls that leave a trail of pain. You'll discover how these souls confront their past through the eyes of their victims, why some remain trapped in a shadowy limbo, and how the cycle of rebirth offers not punishment, but a chance to learn and heal. The core of this journey, where we unravel the balance of karma and the possibility of redemption, holds insights that might shift the way you view good, evil, and the human soul. Subscribe and hit the bell to stay with us for every moment of this exploration. These revelations are too powerful to miss. What if death isn't the end for someone like Benito Mussolini, but the beginning of a reckoning? Picture this: a soul steps out of life, not into fire or clouds, but into a vast, silent mirror, not the kind that shows your face, but one that reflects every moment of your existence, every choice, every word, every wound you left behind. Edgar Cayce, known as the sleeping prophet, described this as the soul's first stop after death. For a man who wielded power like a blade, igniting wars and silencing voices, what would it mean to face the full weight of his legacy? This isn't the hell of storybooks, with devils and pitchforks. Cayce's vision is far more unsettling, more human. Imagine Mussolini standing in that mirror, no longer the untouchable dictator, but a soul stripped bare. He'd feel the terror of a mother clutching her child as bombs fell. He'd hear the cries of soldiers lost in battles he championed. He'd taste the despair of a nation gripped by fear and betrayal. Every emotion, every consequence pouring into his soul like a flood. Could you endure reliving your life through the pain you caused others? This process, Cayce said, isn't about divine punishment. It's about truth. The soul doesn't just watch its life like a movie, it experiences it from the other side. For someone like Mussolini, who built an empire on control and pride, this mirror would be a tidal wave of anguish, not to torment, but to awaken, to make the soul understand the ripples of its actions, the lives it altered, the futures it stole. What would it be like to carry that kind of weight, to feel millions of broken hearts as if they were your own? But here's where it gets strange. This mirror isn't a one-way street. Cayce believed the soul doesn't just see, it interacts with what it finds. Imagine Mussolini, confronted by the faces of those he harmed, their voices echoing in his mind. Would he rage against it, deny it, or would a flicker of remorse begin to stir? The mirror doesn't force a soul to change. It simply holds up the truth, and that truth can be heavier than any fire. Yet, there's a twist that keeps you wondering. Not every soul is ready to face this mirror. Some, weighed down by pride or fear, turn away, refusing to look. Others get lost in the reflection, unable to move forward. What happens to a soul like that one that can't or won't see the truth? Does it drift forever, caught in its own denial? Or is there something else waiting, something even more profound? Stay with us, because the answer lies deeper in this journey, and it's not what you might expect. What happens when a soul like Benito Mussolini's turns away from its own truth? Imagine a man who ruled with an iron fist, who silenced voices and shaped a nation through fear. Now picture that soul, stripped of its throne, standing in a vast, shadowy void. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, called this state stuckness a limbo where the soul lingers, chained not by chains, but by its own unyielding ego. Could someone who thrived on power, who lived for control, ever let go of it, even after death? This isn't the fiery hell of old sermons, nor a ghostly haunting from a horror tale. Cayce described these middle realms as a space where time stretches, heavy and unrelenting. For a soul like Mussolini's, steeped in pride and defiance, this could mean centuries of wandering alone with the echoes of his own voice, his own justifications. He might replay his speeches, his triumphs, his vision of an empire, clinging to the illusion of greatness. All the while, the mirror of truth, the one that shows the pain he caused, stands untouched, waiting. Imagine the weight of that isolation, where the only prison is the one you built yourself. What would it feel like to be your own captor, locked in a loop of your own making? This stagnation, Cayce said, isn't just a pause, it's a struggle. The soul, still gripped by its earthly identity, fights to hold on to what it was. For Mussolini, that might mean reliving the roar of crowds, the salutes, the power, while ignoring the cries of those he crushed. But the universe, Cayce taught, is patient. It doesn't force the soul to move forward, but it nudges gently, persistently, a faint whisper of something greater, a flicker of light in the distance, tugs at even the most stubborn spirit. Some souls, though, dig in deeper, refusing to hear it. Others begin to waver, sensing that their resistance only tightens the chains. What would it take for a soul like that to finally listen? Here's the twist that keeps you wondering. This limbo isn't eternal, but it's not entirely escapable either. Cayce believed the soul can choose to stay stuck, replaying its own story for ages. But the universe keeps offering a way out. That way out, though, comes with a price, a willingness to face the truth and let go of the self. What happens when a soul like Mussolini's, so bound to its own legend, starts to feel that pull? Or worse, what if it never does, and the wandering stretches on? The next part of this journey takes us to a turning point, where the soul faces a choice that could change its path forever. Stick with us, because what comes next isn't just about Mussolini, it's about the power of transformation. And it's not what you might expect. What if the soul of someone like Mussolini doesn't face eternal punishment, but a chance to start over? Edgar Cayce taught that after the mirror of truth and the limbo of stuckness, every soul eventually finds its way to rebirth, not as a reward, not as forgiveness, but as a classroom, a chance to learn what it missed in life. Could a soul that caused so much pain really be given another shot? This isn't about escaping consequences. Cayce's vision of rebirth is rooted in the law of balance, a cosmic principle that doesn't judge but demands growth. For a soul like Mussolini's, rebirth might mean returning as someone on the other side of power, a child abandoned in the chaos of war, a refugee fleeing the kind of regime he once built, or a person living under the weight of oppression. Imagine the irony, a dictator reborn as one of the powerless, feeling every ounce of fear and loss he once inflicted. What would it be like to walk in the shoes of those you harmed, not knowing why life feels so heavy? This process, Cayce said, isn't about revenge or payback. It's about understanding. The soul doesn't carry a neon sign saying, "I was Mussolini." Instead, it carries the weight of its past actions, woven into the fabric of its new life. That child, that refugee, that outcast, they might struggle with an unexplainable sense of guilt, a drive to make things right, or a deep inner conflict they can't name. Cayce believed these challenges are the soul's way of grappling with its own history, learning empathy through experience. Could you imagine a soul learning to love through the very pain it once caused? But here's where it gets complex. Rebirth isn't a straight path. Some souls embrace the lessons, slowly unraveling their past mistakes. Others resist, repeating old patterns, pride, control, or anger, carrying them into the new life. For Mussolini, this might mean a life of struggle, where every attempt to dominate fails, forcing him to confront his own limits. Cayce said the universe is patient, offering as many lives as it takes for the soul to grow. But how many lives would it take for a soul so steeped in destruction to find its way to humility? And here's the twist that pulls you deeper. Not every soul learns its lesson in one go. Some, like Mussolini's, might cycle through lives of hardship, each one a mirror of the pain they caused, until something clicks. What happens when a soul keeps missing the point, spiraling through lives of loss and struggle? Or what if, in one quiet moment, it finally starts to understand? The next part of this journey takes us into the heart of that struggle, a cycle of resistance and suffering that could last lifetimes. Stay with us, because what comes next reveals whether even the darkest souls can find their way to light. What if a soul like Mussolini's keeps fighting its own lessons, even through lifetimes? Edgar Cayce taught that rebirth isn't a free pass, it's a chance to grow. But some souls cling to their old ways, trapped in a cycle of their own making. Imagine a soul so rooted in pride and power that it resists every opportunity to change. Could someone who once ruled a nation ever bend enough to learn humility? This resistance, Cayce said, creates a loop of suffering, not because the universe is cruel, but because the soul itself builds the cage. For Mussolini, this might mean a new life filled with loss, where every grasp for control slips away. Picture him reborn as a man struggling with addiction, his need for power replaced by a craving he can't master. Or as a leader who rises only to fall, betrayed by those he trusted, mirroring the chaos he once sowed. Each life becomes a reflection of his past, a chance to see what he refused in the mirror of truth. What would it feel like to live a life where every failure whispers of your own history? Cayce believed these cycles aren't random. The soul's choices in one life shape the next, like ripples in a pond. A soul that caused pain might face rejection, poverty, or violence not as punishment, but as a teacher. Mussolini's soul could find itself in a body racked by guilt it can't explain, driven to make amends but stumbling at every turn. The universe, patient and unyielding, keeps offering these lessons, waiting for the soul to pause and listen. But what happens when the soul keeps running, keeps fighting, keeps clinging to the shadow of who it was? The deeper truth is that resistance doesn't just delay growth, it deepens the pain. Cayce described souls that spiral through lives of despair, addiction, or rage, each one a chance to face their past, but also a risk of sinking further. For Mussolini, this could mean a life where he's powerless, mocked, or isolated, feeling the weight of his own legacy without knowing why. The soul might rage against it, blaming the world, repeating the same mistakes in new forms. Yet, Cayce said, even in this struggle, there's a spark of hope, a moment where the soul might whisper, "I'm tired of this. Could that moment ever come for a soul so hardened by its own pride? Here's the twist that keeps you hooked. This cycle isn't just about suffering, it's about the possibility of breaking free. Some souls, Cayce taught, keep looping through pain until they finally say, "I understand." Others stay locked in defiance, their suffering stretching across lifetimes. What would it take for a soul like Mussolini's to finally let go? And what happens if it doesn't? Could it influence the living in ways we don't expect? Stay with us, because the next part dives into a chilling possibility. How a soul like this might reach out from beyond, touching the world in ways that will leave you stunned. What if a soul like Mussolini's, stuck in its own darkness, could still touch the living? Edgar Cayce warned that souls trapped in the middle realms, those who refuse their lessons, don't always stay silent. Imagine a restless spirit, heavy with unresolved pride or rage, seeking a way to be felt, to be remembered. Could the echo of a dictator's soul ripple into our world, stirring chaos in ways we barely notice? This isn't about possession or horror movie demons. Cayce's vision is subtler, more unsettling. A soul like Mussolini's, lost in its own limbo, might project its turmoil onto the living, especially those already fragile, teetering on the edge of despair or confusion. Think of someone battling depression, wrestling with anger, or feeling unmoored from their purpose. That person might pick up on a stray emotion, a fleeting thought, or an urge that doesn't quite feel like their own. It's not the soul taking over, it's more like a shadow passing through, amplifying pain or doubt. Have you ever felt a heaviness you couldn't explain, as if something beyond you was whispering? Cayce described these souls as drawn to the living, not always with malice, but with a desperate need. Some seek refuge, a place to rest their weary essence. Others, like Mussolini's, might crave to relive their power, their influence, even for a moment. Imagine a soul that once commanded nations now brushing against a vulnerable mind, stirring impulses of control or defiance. It might manifest as a sudden obsession, a burst of irrational anger, or a pull toward destructive choices. Cayce believed this happens most to those without a spiritual anchor, people adrift, unguarded, open to influence. What would it be like to carry the weight of a lost soul's emotions without knowing why? But this influence isn't a one-way street. Cayce taught that the living can affect these souls, too. A person grounded in compassion or clarity can act like a beacon, either repelling a wayward soul or guiding it toward peace. The catch is, most of us don't even realize we're in this dance with the unseen. A fleeting moment of kindness, a prayer, or even a thought of forgiveness could shift the path of a lingering spirit. But what happens when the living are too caught in their own struggles to notice? Could a soul like Mussolini's find a way to linger, feeding off chaos it helped create? Here's the twist that pulls you in deeper. These interactions aren't always accidental. Cayce hinted that some souls, trapped in their cycles, are drawn to people connected to their past, perhaps those they harmed or those tied to their story. Could Mussolini's soul be reaching out to someone you know? Someone struggling under an invisible weight? And if so, is there a way to break that connection, to help both the living and the lost? Stay with us, because the next part reveals a surprising truth. How we, the living, might hold the key to freeing even the darkest souls from their chains. How do you reach a soul like Mussolini's, lost in its own darkness, maybe even touching the living with its unrest? Edgar Cayce taught that the answer isn't in banishing or fighting these souls. but in something far simpler, yet profound. Light, not a blazing spotlight, but the quiet glow of compassion, truth, and presence. Could something as human as kindness be enough to shift the path of a soul that caused so much pain? This isn't about rituals or exorcisms. Cayce believed that a soul stuck in limbo, whether it's Mussolini or anyone else, responds to the energy of the living. When you live with intention, with love, with clarity, you become a beacon. Your presence alone can act like a lighthouse, guiding a wandering spirit toward understanding. Imagine someone mired in guilt or pride, feeling a pull toward your calm, your empathy, like a ship drawn to shore. Have you ever felt like your kindness touched someone in a way you couldn't explain? Cayce emphasized that prayer real. Heartfelt prayer can work wonders, not the rote words of a script, but a genuine call for a soul's awakening. Picture yourself whispering to the universe, asking for a lost spirit to find clarity, to see its truth, to let go of its burdens. For a soul like Mussolini's, weighed down by centuries of defiance, this could be the first crack in its armor, a moment where it senses there's another way. It's not about forcing change, but offering a path. What would it feel, oncogenic change, to pray for someone who once caused so much harm? But here's the deeper layer. Cayce said this act of light isn't just for the lost soul, it's for the living. 2. By cultivating compassion, you strengthen your own spirit, creating a shield against the chaos of wayward souls. People who are lost in their own pain, anger, addiction, despair are often the most vulnerable to influence from restless spirits. Your grounded presence, your choice to live with purpose, can protect them and guide the unseen at the same time. Imagine the ripple effect. One act of kindness, one moment of forgiveness, could heal both the living and the dead. Could your own light be the key to someone else's salvation? Now, here's the twist that keeps you wondering. This power to guide isn't limited to saints or mystics. It's in all of us. Cayce believed that every soul, no matter how ordinary, carries a spark of divine light. But what happens when that light dims, when the living lose their way? And what does it take to shine brightly enough to reach a soul as heavy as Mussolini's? Stay with us, because the next part explores a mind-bending possibility. That soul might be closer to you than you think, living among us, learning its lessons right now. What if the soul of someone like Mussolini is walking among us right now? Edgar Cayce believed that souls who caused great harm don't vanish into some distant void. They return, reborn, to face their lessons in the world of the living. Imagine a soul that once fueled wars and division, now living a quiet, troubled life next door. Could someone you know, a neighbor, a friend, or even a stranger, be carrying the weight of a past like Mussolini's? Cayce taught that these souls come back not to repeat their destruction, but to learn what they missed. Compassion, humility, connection. Picture Mussolini's soul reborn as an ordinary person, perhaps someone struggling with inner turmoil they can't explain. Maybe it's a man wrestling with anger, always on the edge of losing control, haunted by a sense of guilt he doesn't understand. Or a woman living in isolation, yearning for meaning but sabotaged by her own pride. These lives, Cayce said, are the universe's classroom, where the soul faces the consequences of its past through new challenges. Have you ever met someone whose struggles felt deeper than their circumstances could explain? This isn't about pointing fingers or guessing who's who. Cayce's point was that every soul, no matter its history, is on a journey toward light. A soul like Mussolini's might be reborn into hardship not as punishment, but as a mirror to reflect what it once caused. Imagine that soul as a child growing up in poverty, feeling the sting of rejection, or as an adult trapped in a cycle of failure, forced to confront their own limits. Each struggle is a chance to learn what power and pride obscured in their past life. But what would it take for such a soul to recognize its own lessons, to finally break free from its old patterns? The deeper truth is that these souls aren't just out there, they're part of our world, woven into our lives. Cayce believed we're all connected, and the people we meet, the ones who challenge us or need our help, might be tied to us through the threads of past lives. That person who frustrates you, who carries a heavy energy, or who seems lost in their own pain, could they be a soul like Mussolini's, working through their karmic debt? And if so, how do we respond? With judgment, or with the kind of compassion that might help them heal? Here's the twist that pulls you in. Cayce suggested that these reborn souls don't always know their own history, but we might feel it in their presence. A fleeting moment of unease, a spark of recognition, or a pull to help someone without knowing why. Could that be a clue? What if your kindness, your patience, or even a single conversation could be the turning point for a soul learning to love again? Stay with us, because the final part of this journey reveals a truth that ties it all together. No soul is ever truly lost, and the path to redemption might be closer than you think. Is there ever a point where a soul like Mussolini's runs out of chances? Edgar Cayce's teachings offer a radical answer. No soul is ever truly lost, but the path back to light can be long, winding, and sometimes so faint it's almost invisible. Could even the darkest soul, one that caused untold suffering, find its way back to wholeness? Cayce believed that no soul faces complete destruction. Instead, those who resist their lessons clinging to pride, rage, or denial risk a kind of unraveling. Imagine a soul like Mussolini's, stubborn and unyielding, refusing to face the mirror of truth or learn through rebirth. Over lifetimes, that soul might fray, its sense of self dissolving into fragments of raw emotion, pain, regret, or bitterness. It's not annihilation, but a scattering like a painting reduced to smudges of color, no longer whole, but still there. What would it feel like to be a soul so broken, yet still holding a spark of potential? But here's the heart of Cayce's message. Even in that scattered state, redemption is possible. No matter how far a soul has strayed, a single moment, a tear, a kind act, a fleeting wish to be better can start the rebuilding. Picture Mussolini's soul, after centuries of wandering or struggling through lives of hardship, finally pausing. Maybe it's in the quiet of a reborn life, where a small act of love from another, a stranger's smile, a hand extended in forgiveness reaches that faint spark. Cayce said the universe is patient, always offering chances to begin again, no matter how small the step. Could one moment of grace really change the course of a soul's journey? This truth extends beyond the lost soul to all of us. Cayce taught that every soul, no matter its past, is tied to the same divine light. The struggles we see in others, the anger, the pain, the lostness might be the echoes of a soul like Mussolini's, working through its lessons, and our response matters. A word of kindness, a moment of understanding, or even a silent prayer can be the drop of water that starts to revive a parched spirit. Have you ever felt like your small act of compassion made a difference you couldn't quite measure? Here's the twist that leaves you reflecting. Cayce believed that no soul is too far gone, but the journey back requires both the soul's own awakening and the light of others. What if the people around you, the ones struggling or causing pain, are souls in need of that light? And what if your choice to live with love, to shine even a little, could be the final push a soul needs to start healing? As we close this journey, we're left with a truth that binds us all. Every soul, no matter how lost, is on a path toward light, and we might be the ones holding the lamp. We've journeyed through the profound teachings of Edgar Cayce, exploring what happens to souls like Mussolini's after death, from facing the mirror of truth, where every pain they caused is felt, to lingering in the shadowy middle realms, trapped by their own pride. We've seen how rebirth offers not punishment, but lessons chances to live the struggles they once inflicted. Some souls resist, spiraling through lives of loss, while others, with time, find redemption through a single act of love. We even touched on how these lost souls might brush against the living, stirring unease, and how our compassion can guide them toward light. And finally, we learned that no soul is ever truly lost. There's always a spark, waiting for a moment of grace to reignite. What can we take from this? First, every action matters. Our choices ripple across lives, even beyond this one. Second, compassion isn't just for the living, it's a force that can heal the unseen, the lost, the broken, and most importantly, we're all connected. Your kindness, your light, might be the key to someone's redemption, whether they're here or beyond. I don't know about you, but this makes me look at the people around me differently, wondering what battles their souls might be fighting. Maybe you felt it too, that pull to help someone, to offer a kind word, not knowing why it matters so much. It's heavy to think about, isn't it? The idea that even the darkest souls are still out there, learning, struggling, hoping for a way back. It leaves me with a quiet ache, but also a flicker of hope that no one is beyond saving. And maybe we're all part of that saving. In our next video, we'll dive into the most heartbreaking part of this story. What happens when a soul's lessons touch someone you love? Want to hear more? Drop continue in the comments below, and let's keep this journey going together.